Welcome, Elaine.
Hey Mackenzie, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So Elaine's process engineering started while she was in high school as an active student ambassador for Queensland Minerals and Energy Academy and participating in resource sector related immersion programs. Her ambassadorial role continued when she came to QUT, playing an integral role in the humanitarian engineering group, Engineers Without Borders, and also in the Process Engineering Student Society. Before graduating, Elaine gained valuable technical experience with internships at both Peabody and Shell, and also had a paper published by the Department of Chemical and Biochemical Engineering, one on exchange at the Technical University of Denmark. So now working for Shell, she's just moved from a field process engineering role into a process engineering role, and she provides technical support to oil and gas production facilities. So that is super exciting. Can't wait to hear more. But before we jump in, Elaine, have you brought an epic, interesting, inspiring, crazy STEM story with you?
Yeah, so I thought I'd actually take it from an example that I have at my facility working as a field process engineer. So in Chinchilla, which is our base, we do a lot of driving to our facilities, which can be up to 2 to 3 hours in driving. So recently our company has partnered with a university and we're doing research trials on in-vehicle fatigue detection technologies. So a lot of my colleagues have got like their whole cars kitted up with cameras that sense your eyes and then a headband to sense brain activity. And what that does is in the events of a driver experiencing a microsleep, the technology can actually detect that and then like create an alert by some alarms and then vibrating the chair and can actually help the driver get out of their microsleep. So yeah, it's really valuable technology, not only just for industry and a lot of heavy vehicle driving, but potentially even something that we could use in our everyday future in our cars even. So yeah, I thought it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear how we can make driving on the road safer and especially out in those outback areas.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
So you are a process engineer. How would you describe that to people who might not know what that is?
Yeah, so I guess as a process engineer, no surprises, you're dealing with anything that has a process and you're turning a raw material into a final end product. So anything that has a process typically has a process engineer. So things from manufacturing, so fast moving consumer goods like food that you see at Woolies, pharmaceuticals, wastewater treatment, nuclear power plants, or yeah, even mining or the oil and gas industry would be a couple of examples. So I kind of like to think of process engineering kind of like as the jack of all trades, master of none, because you kind of see it from high level perspective, but yet you're still dealing with a whole heap of other disciplines, say for example mechanical or the electrical or even a control systems engineer to kind of make a decision. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a bit of an explanation of it.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds very varied. And as you said, like so many different skills involved. How did you find yourself into this area?
Yeah, so I think I was pretty lucky at high school. My school was linked to an academy called the Queensland Minerals and Energy Academy. And what they did is they had these kind of enriching experiences that they had high school students go to. So when I was in grade 11, I got to go on a mining challenge to Mount Isa. And that's where I kind of gained an appreciation for an operating facility of a mining facility. I kind of went into it thinking that I would be a civil engineer building structures for the mines. But when I got there, I really appreciated kind of how much effort or how much intensity is required. And the funny thing is, so I remember when I was in high school, came back from the experience and was sharing my experiences on assembly. And I even said, really appreciated turning the raw material into the final product. Then, little did I know in 2 years' time, I would be starting at QUT, studying process engineering and actually seeing those exact words verbatim in the description of process eng. So it's kind of crazy how it all worked out, I guess, in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you definitely managed to fall into your path. So Yeah, you're currently like so you were a field process engineer and now are a process engineer for Shell QGC. How would you describe those two roles and what you do now?
Yeah, so part of my grad program is I'm on a 3-year grad program where I do, I guess, rotations. So my first 18 months I spent working in the field in Chinchilla, and that was more working on like short to mid-term projects and like assistance. And so really getting an understanding of the facilities and how they work and kind of getting your hands dirty and trying to gain as much experience as you can. So that's what I did for the past 18 months. So I traveled all around Chinchilla and its areas just to see the different processing facilities that we have there and how they all work, which is awesome. And yeah, so then as of 2 weeks ago, I started in this new process engineering role based in Brisbane now. And I'm kind of working on mid to long-term projects. And one of the big key aspects of my role now is to provide process engineering support for monitoring and reporting greenhouse gas emissions that we make from our assets itself. And also, like, we're also trying to develop and kind of mature this framework so that, you know, we can identify like opportunities to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but not only identify them, but actually make sure that they're implemented, because it kind of aligns with, I guess, Shell's whole goal to be a net zero emissions company in scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2050. So yeah, it's kind of cool now to have a bit of a change of pace and go long term. But I think it's really cool to be in something that's such a hot topic at the moment, but also can benefit us all. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely an awesome goal to be working towards for the company, and especially in a position within that space as well.
Yeah, also, yeah, it's a great opportunity. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, building back on your grad program, you had the opportunity to go to a bunch of different sites. As you were saying, a bit more of those like short-term programs, I guess a bit more of like a first responder position. If anything was to like happen or go wrong at one of the sites. Tell us a bit more about the experiences out there.
Yeah, so kind of how the facilities work is that, so obviously our facilities are all spread out, and then we have an engineer that kind of deals with the immediate day-to-day. But when those immediate day-to-day actions just get too much, or they require a specific discipline, say for example, process engineer or mechanical engineer, that's where they come to our team in Chinchilla, where we kind of have a hub of each of the disciplines. And yeah, we kind of go out there and see and assist them with what they need to do. So yeah, there's definitely been times where you just kind of get called out. They go, oh, we're seeing a bit of an issue. You drive out there, and yeah, it's just awesome because you can kind of, you get to see, like, I've learned a lot from my seniors just from seeing them, how they kind of approach a problem, and kind of going through like the general checks of what you think might be the problem and learning how to get those troubleshooting skills. So yeah, it was super cool to kind of just like run out and see what the major problem is. It's never as dramatic as you think it is, where you're like saving a life or something like that. It's a bit more anticlimactic than that. But no, it's still pretty cool to kind of learn how to put yourself in that mindset. But yeah, definitely not as heroic as you think it is. So.
But that kind of, yeah, like you were saying, the troubleshooting mentality, like often someone might be faced with a problem, and sometimes you might see it at first and just be so overwhelmed by the fact that there is a problem, rather than trying to, I guess, work around and find some of those solutions. So I guess those skills would be super valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of learn like not to be like super overwhelmed by it, but you kind of have to like take a step back, and yeah, like slowly, like and methodically kind of go through the different solutions. And like, because, you know, you also have to be mindful that you're making the right decisions as well. So, and you're making those decisions based on the information that you have and being confident that that is the right sets of information. And, you know, you don't want to go through confirmation bias, or, you know, just only selecting the bits of information that help you, but trying to take a bit of a holistic view on it. Yeah, so definitely challenges you sometimes. So yeah, definitely a bit of a learning curve, but it's just awesome to get out there and get your hands dirty and get amongst it, really. So yeah, it's really good fun.
Yeah, cool. And so before you stepped into that role, how do you feel like your studies at uni really prepared you for, yeah, just jumping straight in?
Yeah, so so like I said before, I really like the operational aspect of working on a facility. So I was really happy that QUT kind of had the option to have like a second major. So it kind of helped me position myself in my degree selection. So it was a process engineering major, but then my second major was in mechanical. And I kind of did that just so that I had a bit more background on more the mechanical side of things, based on, there being like a lot of pumps and like compressors and all that stuff out in the field. So yeah, I was super happy with that degree selection at least. But in terms of my actual course contents, in my first 2 years at Shell, I probably spent a lot of time using some of the knowledge that I got from my courses that I actually did. And admittedly, I probably should have paid a bit more attention when I was doing at uni, because I used it a lot when I actually got into work. So that was a bit of a shock. But no, it's been great. But I think the best thing about QT was all the enriching experiences that I had throughout my time. So so in my course itself, like we got to go to a sugar factory, we got to do the Forex brewery, of course, and then we also got to take a virtual reality tour of QUT's Mackay pilot scale plants of a biomass facility, which was one of their first times doing virtual reality tours. So yeah, there were so many opportunities during my course structure, but then an awesome thing that I got to do was a couple of process engineering students and our lecturer managed to go to Denmark, and we did essentially a road trip through Denmark, visiting different processing facilities. So I got to see a nuclear power plant, I got to see a sugar mill, paper manufacturing place, biomass facility place. But the best one was seeing the Lego factory. So yeah, that was awesome to see that. But it really gives you, jokes aside about how it was an excursion, it was really awesome to see kind of how different industries work, and like their ways of working as an operating site. It was just awesome to kind of get a glimpse of it. And it helps you as a young engineer kind of calibrate yourself to learn, what's normal, what isn't normal. And yeah, it kind of helps you set your benchmark before I started as a grad process engineer in my role now. So yeah, definitely a lot of learnings, I think, QT. So
yeah, but definitely from all those experiences of being able to visit those different plants and factories and things, definitely makes sense why you could list off such an extensive list at the beginning of the interview, when you had just bam, 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 all these roles for process engineers.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and look, anything that has a process, but yeah, no, I definitely think I was pretty fortunate to see that many facilities, because typically engineer or process engineers can be pretty niche and stick to their one process and only ever see that for their lifetime. So to get the opportunity to see all the different process facilities and to see what was out there was super beneficial. But it kind of also made my job really hard when I wanted to decide what I wanted to do at the end, because there's so many options. So yeah, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I really like that word that you used before. You said you had an opportunity to calibrate which direction you wanted to head into. And then interesting that you started off in that underground copper mine experience and ended up back in the resources sector. So how would you actually describe what you're doing at the moment, day to day?
Yeah, so like I said before, I really got into the role to be all hands on deck and, to get my hands dirty. But definitely not all, hard hats and overalls all the time. There's definitely a few days where I'm just in the office and, just doing normal things. So a couple of my day, like a normal day would potentially be just replying to emails in regards to projects and making sure certain projects that I'm working on are progressing fine. So I find that a lot of my role at the moment, in both of my roles that I've had, is a lot of stakeholder engagement. So really talking to people and understanding what's holding up the implementation of a certain design is probably one of them. Another one would be actually creating a design and designing different solutions to problems that we've addressed as being an issue. So that might be also talking to different disciplines and different engineers to, one, get an understanding of what the problem is, and then two, also checking back with them to verify whether or not the solution that I suggested it is actually worthwhile and worth pursuing. And yeah, I think as a process engineer, a lot of what we do is actually looking at trends and looking at how our facility is running. And so a lot of people, like say for a mechanical engineer, they need to go out and have a look at the pipe physically or whatever, the pump physically. Whereas as a process engineer, we can get all our data kind of online and you kind of see it in real time. And so there's definitely a lot of data analysis and trying interpreting trends. I mentioned before, like you need to be selective about, you need to be conscious of what data you're selecting because you don't want to just select something just to prove your point. You need to look at it at a holistic view. So yeah, it sometimes takes a lot to kind of step back from the trends that you're looking at. You're in this little hole dungeon trying to work out what you're trying to do. But yeah, sometimes you just need to step back from your work. So yeah, like that's a range of what I would do on the day to day. But I would say definitely a lot of stakeholder engagement, particularly in these roles. So yeah.
No, cool. Like definitely an awesome insight. Also, we'll touch on your time at uni. You were certainly very involved keeping yourself busy.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me a bit more about your experiences?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I spent a lot of time working with Engineers Without Borders and also with Process Engineering Student Society. But I am such an advocate for, getting involved at uni. I think it's such an awesome opportunity to kind of develop all your soft skills over time. Like the first one is like, you think of time management, you've got uni, you've got work, you've got your friends and your family, and you've really got to learn how to prioritize things. But like, I think one of the main things I learned from being in those student societies is learning how to like organize and implement like an initiative for, I guess, a common goal, like say, for an example, an event or some sort of like weekly initiative that you want to do. It's actually, you kind of learn and appreciate how difficult it is to get people together to do something. And I think it's super valuable to kind of learn that early on, because I think you find that a lot of engineering isn't just trying to design something, but you need to learn how you can effectively implement it. So the way that it's implemented is actually correct and as per the design that you've originally made. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in doing student societies. And, obviously the last one is networking, because, you meet all these like-minded people, they become friends, etc. Makes uni much more bearable. But also sometimes you meet like people who aren't quite like-minded as well. So you also have to kind of learn those soft skills of, conflict resolution and stuff like that. So yeah, I have nothing but good stuff to say about joining a student society. And so I think like everyone should at least try and participate in some capacity whatsoever. So yeah, I think it's definitely good growth, not only for your career, but just like personally as well, just growing. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned there, like obviously getting a chance to meet those networking and meeting like-minded people. Do you think it was pretty key in being able to keep interested and keep involved in your degree?
Yeah, for sure. So especially my process engineering role in the student society, I dealt with like a lot of the lecturers as well. And I think just having that face-to-face time with the lecturers, sometimes potentially able to get you opportunities to do things that aren't typical of what you can do. So yeah, I definitely think that networking with your lecturers is great. And it also just makes it easier when you have like a question to ask, you can really ask. And then there's no judgment or whatsoever, but there's also just they're more inclined to kind of help you out. So yeah, no, it works in your favor a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like you said before, nothing but positives.
Yeah, nothing but positives. Yeah.
So that's nearly all we have time for the interview today, Elaine. But before I let you go, knowing what you know now with all your experiences behind you, what's one thing that you would go back and tell your younger self?
I think it'd be around work-life balance and kind of learning how to pace yourself. So I guess for some high school students and some uni students in their studies, they kind of have like an end goal in mind. So mine, for example, was to get to a grad program at some company, for example. So you kind of like work and you have this kind of intensity to your work to try and achieve this goal, right, through high school and through uni. But then, so you're kind of working at almost like you're sprinting there. But then when you get to like working life, you realize that you can't keep working at that same sprint level. And then working life is, a completely different new field where, you kind of kind of like marathon pace now, and you kind of got to slow down. And I think it's so easy to say now in hindsight, but when I first started my working career, I felt like I started feeling bad because I wasn't maintaining this intense sprinting pace throughout my working life. But after a discussion with my boss, you kind of learn that you're working for the next 20 years of your life, so you kind of got to learn and kind of be at peace that you're working at a different pace. So yeah, I think it's just important to kind of learn how to establish that work-life balance so early on, just so it's just sustainable for yourself and even like for the company that you end up working for. So yeah, I think it's pretty important.
That ability to like mentally shift gears.
Yeah, absolutely. Super important, super easy to say, but super hard to do, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely easy to say in hindsight, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's all for this episode of Ready STEM Go. So thank you to our listeners, and another massive thank you to Elaine for joining us.
So thanks, guys.
So make sure that you subscribe to our channel and never miss an upcoming episode. And please join our Facebook group, QT STEM is for me, to keep in touch with all of the resources and events that you can access. Bye.